Across Morris County, 39 parks and historic sites tell the story of who we are. From revolutionary beginnings to the breakthroughs that fueled America's Industrial Revolution. These landscapes preserve the farms, forests, villages, and the innovations that shaped the nation. Each park holds a piece of our shared past and the adventures that await. This is where the story begins. Welcome to Beyond the Green, Parks and Paths. Hey everybody, we're here in Speedwell Village at the factory. We're sitting here today with Karl Wietzel, Senior Historical Programs Specialist. Welcome, Karl.
Thanks for coming.
So, tell us exactly, what was the factory, what happened here, what makes this place, this location, historically so special?
So this building is on the National Register of Historical Places because of the work that was done here in subsequent demonstration of the telegraph between the years of 1837 and 1838. Alfred Vail, having come up with this idea of an electromagnetic telegraph, formed a partnership with Alfred Vail, a person that he had seen in New York City. They were acquaintances at the university, which Samuel Morse taught at, and Alfred Vail attended. And Alfred Vail saw a demonstration of the electromagnetic telegraph while visiting his alma mater in 1837. After some conversation, Alfred Vail, along with his brother and his father, agreed to continue work on telegraph experimentation and refining the technology for Samuel Morse. So they were both working on the development and financing the project.
So basically, when you think about it, you have an educator and a student, with Morse being the teacher here.
Yeah.
Do you think that Alfred Vail sees something in this that Samuel Morse missed, and when they started talking about it, do you think it was like they kind of connected and Alfred Vail had ideas that Samuel Morse may have not thought about?
I think so the question of how this how the final product of the telegraph system came about is a matter of historical interpretation.
Okay.
And if you talk to different scholars, you'll have different answers about how that kind of came about. I think people are in agreement that fundamentally Alfred Vail was a key member of the team that kind of finalized the invention and made it ready for public demonstration both locally and for the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. But how that came about, I think, is, again, a matter of interpretation. So I think what Alfred Vail encountered was exciting, and it was had taken some steps with the technology. So Samuel Morse's invention had moved the telegraph development along significantly. So as inventions tend to happen, these ideas were floating around by a variety of inventors and thinkers, not just in America, but all over the world. And different versions of the telegraph had actually been invented already. Mm-hmm. But Samuel Morse had added a couple of key components. A single wire system was important. The Morse code system, which Samuel Morse created, was a significant development. But what Alfred Vail did was take his expertise in tinkering and mechanical engineering, combined with other input from the chemical engineering standpoint, and then the idea itself from Samuel Morse, bringing all these things together to end up with a result that was exciting for the world.
Yeah. Just when you look at the historical timeline of all this, what came first, Morse code or the telegraph, or did it coincide together?
It coincided, yeah. I mean, the idea of sending a message over a conduit over a long distance, I guess, is the first idea. But how that message is being sent was a matter of interpretation, and different people had different ideas about how that was going to be done. So Samuel Morse came up with the numerical Morse code system. Basically, words were associated with numbers, and the sender would send a number, and the receiver would translate it with a book of codes. Right. Basically, but what we're familiar with today is this the alpha system, which is that dots and dashes, a series of dots and dashes are associated with particular letters. Right. And while there is, again, some disagreement about how that came about, a lot of that work took place here at Speedwell Village. Yeah. So, as around us, you can see that, there's a lot that went on here. And what a lot of people don't know, that Samuel Morse, lived here on site. And at one point in time, we learned in the previous episode that Stephen Vail's wife took care of him while he was sick. But do you think in any of his writings, do we know, we kind of know that Samuel Morse took the credit for everything down the road, kind of leaving Alfred Vail forgotten in history to some degree. But do we know in any of his writings afterwards, did he give any credit to the Vails for what they did? Yes and no. Certainly early on, the correspondences. Starting with the initial agreement in 1837 that I guess Alfred Vail would receive, sort of credit for the work, but Samuel Morse would be credited with the invention. He would, receive, I think, an eighth of the of whatever money may have been received from this work coming to the Vails. But yes, I mean, I think through the demonstration process between 1838 and I guess 1844, Samuel Morse continued to draw attention to himself rather than share credit with Alfred Vail and his other collaborators. In fact, in some instances would tell Alfred Vail not to join him when he was meeting with important figures, presidents, senators, representatives, because I think Alfred Vail Samuel Morse wanted to take sort of full credit for this work. So,
do you think was there any animosity from Alfred Vail?
There was frustration for sure, and the letters, reflect that. That he was frustrated with being sort of ignored. I think, but my sense of Alfred Vail was that he just wanted he wasn't really looking for financial gain. He just wanted to receive credit for the work that was done. This is a man who I think probably looked up to Samuel Morse in some respects, as you mentioned. Samuel Morse was a professor. He was a student when they met. Samuel Morse was 47 to Alfred Vail's 30. And I think the relationship probably began with that kind of relationship and developed as Alfred Vail gained confidence through the experimentation and creation process, where he was looking at more of a partnership. But still, Samuel Morse would often refer to him as his assistant rather than his partner. And I think that lack of recognition did irk Alfred Vail, even if he wasn't speaking out about it publicly.
Yeah. At the time, do you think they recognized the importance of this invention?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, people had been working on this idea using electricity and I guess later the idea of magnetism to send a message over a long distance for decades at this point. Yeah. The idea of eliminating basically space and distance to send messages was incredibly profound from a business perspective, from a societal perspective. And so everybody, I think, at least people in the circles who this information was sort of shared, was excited about these developments. Now, the general public, I think, was apprehensive, and people talk about people teasing Alfred Vail's father, Stephen, who was financing most of this project,
Right.
in the community of Morristown about this lightning machine and making sure he wasn't struck by it. So there was a little bit of I guess trepidation or uncertainty from the general public, but for the intellectuals, the scientists, and I think the business people, the idea was incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Now you talk about they refer to it, the locals, as a lightning machine. Why was that?
Well, taking this idea of electricity.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin, electrical experiments using lightning. I think that's probably where it came from.
Got it.
So yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So let's go upstairs and check out the other part of the factory.
Okay. Sure.
All right.
Okay, Karl. So let's talk about what's in the display behind you.
Sure. So in the case behind me are examples of some of the things Alfred Vail was doing to make this invention come to life and to make it practical. These are registers, so these are the systems to receive the message and to make it understandable. Now, the thing with Morse code is that today we're very familiar with an operator receiving the message and basically understanding it as he's receiving it. Morse code operators become very skilled at just hearing the dots and dashes and be able to write it down on a piece of paper. But initially, the idea was that these signals would be taken down by a stylus or a pencil. So basically, operating on you would crank a crank, and it would feed a piece of paper into your series of bumps. Essentially, the apparatus is going up and down as it's meeting this code, and then it's sending that signal, right, with electromagnetism through a long distance. One of the things that Alfred Vail was helping to do was make this sort of make sense. And so the register and the improved methodology for receiving messages, both with the stylus and the register itself, was a big part of his addition to this experiment. So what we're looking at is some examples of registers from the decade following, over the course of the following decade after the initial demonstration here at Speedwell.
So that was 19th century high tech in a way back then, where it almost be
Cutting edge.
almost autonomous, where you put the paper and the pen and it would actually work on its own. And where did that go? Did that ever come to fruition? Because as you were saying, now you had somebody on the other end, an actual human that was taking down and doing the translating, or
Sure.
But that ever come to fruition to work autonomously like that?
Well, you're going to need someone to send it. You're going to need someone to receive it eventually.
Yeah.
And so having this message being printed onto a piece of paper was important to have a record of this message being sent, rather than just relying on the operator to say whether or not to understand what's being transmitted. You have sort of a written record, if you will, of these messages being sent. So yes, it was in use as well. But as we think about Morse code today, as I mentioned, it's a lot more to do with the operator just understanding the dots and dashes.
Sure. So, do we know cost-wise how much money was invested in this? Do we know that?
I would have to look up the numbers.
Okay.
But it was significant, and as I think I mentioned earlier, Stephen Vail, George Vail, and Alfred Vail were the sole financiers of this part of the project. In fact, they were paying for Samuel Morse's coach ride to Speedwell. I mean, that's the financial situation that Samuel Morse found himself in 1837, 1838. The portraits in the Vail house of Bethia and Stephen Vail were created to give Samuel Morse spending money. So it was fully financed by the Vail family.
Yeah.
But the numbers I would have to take a second look at.
But let's go back to talk about this location and how much of an intricate role that Alfred Vail did have, because he did have a big role in this. So do you want to talk more about that?
I think the role was essential. I don't think that Samuel Morse's invention, the telegraph would have been invented by somebody. It was already invented, in fact, in different and less effective ways previously. It was I think it was Alfred Vail's role in making this a practical, a practical tool, which made Samuel Morse become the name associated with the telegraph. So moving from a numeric system to a letter system was at least partially credited to Alfred Vail. A numeric system would have required the sender and the receiver to have a big dictionary of words corresponding with a series of numbers. With the dots and dashes letter system, you could form any word with a shorter list of dots and dashes, if that makes sense. Like I said, the receiver was perfected or at least developed further here. So the mechanism for receiving messages. The stylus that was receiving the messages was moved from a pencil to a stylus, or sort of a pen, to give it more consistency. So you didn't have to keep changing it out. The idea of, and one of the big hurdles, and this is moving away maybe from Alfred Vail's contribution, but the idea of that many people are contributing to a final product came from other Samuel Morse's other colleagues at the university. So they improved the idea of relaying the signal. So initially, the messages could only go about 2 miles, but with a series of relays, which is something that people kind of understand now as common sense. You have a series of relays continuing this message along the wire to increase the distance it can travel. So yeah, in a number of ways, Alfred Vail was key to these developments. And as you read the correspondences, you see Samuel Morse being increasingly excited about the developments that are happening right here in the factory building.
Karl, can you talk about here in Historical Speedwell, how important this site was for not only for Morristown, but for the United States at the time, to transition from colonial times moving into the Industrial Revolution?
So I think one of the areas of American history that is maybe understood or under-celebrated is this early 19th century period. And events like the invention of the telegraph are moving society from agrarian to something more modern, something that we better understand today. Industrial Revolution played a huge part, but advancements and that had to do necessarily with technological innovation, and they all played a role. And telecommunications was a way that you could sort of share that information with others and share news of the day with others. So it was just one example of how entrepreneurs, American innovators, to an as important extent, people across the world were taking us from a colonial era society where things were simple, and life was a little bit more simple in that time, to a world where people are communicating over long distances, to a world where people have some of the some of the freedoms that were afforded by technological innovation. So the ability to think and to create are all in part a result of having to not have to be in your wheat field all day, right? And so yeah, I think it's an appreciated period in American history. There aren't as big sort of national events taking place. Of course, important moments with Jackson and all of these. There are important historical moments in the early 19th century, but a lot of people's understanding sort of skips from the Revolutionary War period, or to a lesser extent the War of 1812, to the Civil War period and the period afterwards. So I think it's an important stepping stone in that story, and I think in a place like Morristown, where there's I think rightfully so, a celebration of the Revolutionary War in that period. I think this is a good second part to that story, a way to continue that American story right here in Morristown, to understand what happened next, what those people gave people like the Vails an opportunity to do, which was to have a chance to create, to invest their energy and skills into making their world, and I think to a, as important extent, the broader world better. So yeah, it's something that we celebrate here, this period in American history, which is not as well understood as others. It can't be understated how important this moment was for our understanding of the modern world. I mean, we rely on instant communication for virtually everything we do today, for better or worse.
Yeah.
And it's all tied into the work that was done right here in this room.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Actually is amazing.
It is.
Well, listen, Karl, thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. If anybody needs any more information about Historical Speedwell, please check out the Morris County Park Commission's website. You will find the link below in the description. Thanks, Karl.
Thank you.
Years ago, I want to say it was 2010. I got at my Olympics. They had such a great season winning the nationals that the U.S. women's national team played the Swedish women's national team here in Rink 1.
Wow.
As a practice game before that year's Olympics.
Wow.
So there's a lot of skating history here at Meta as well. Olympians have skated here. Alex Carpenter on the women's national hockey team skated here for the Colonial. So there's some real interesting activities and programs that happen.
Yeah,